to President of Tatarstan, and today I will be the moderator of the session dedicated to the benefits of urban improvement and new public spaces. Following the example of Moscow, our cities were submerged by a wave of improvements, and there is a whole lot of good results in the capital as well as in all the other regions. And it would be good to understand what's the bottom line, what's the purpose of that, how do we measure the efficiency. And before we start the discussion, I'd like to introduce our speakers. And of course, the most prominent expert is Moscow Deputy Mayor for Housing and Communal Services and Improvement, Petr Birukov. Konstantin Polunin, partner expert of BCG for Urban and Regional Development, head of working with the government relations. Francine Hubin is a bit late. She's founder of Mecanu. She'll join us. Viktor Vakstein, Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences of the Moscow Higher School of Social and Economic Sciences. Alexander Garvin, professor of Yale University, author of the book What Makes a City Attractive, and head of the Center of Urban Economics of Strelka, Yelena Korotkova. Dear speakers, please try to fit into the time of speech, 5 minutes, and of course we are going to have a discussion after the speeches. And now I'd like to give the floor to Petr Birukov. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I have the impression that we are now at the site of improvement of a street. It's so hot, we're all covered with sweat, but nevertheless we are doing what we have to do. So what are we doing? We are improving the city. We make the city comfortable for living, for leisure, and the figures are the following. 313 streets were improved last year, around 500 parks, the 20 kilometers of new streets, and Muscovites are walking on these streets and they live it. So what did we achieve? Why Muscovites went to the streets of Moscow? Because as a result of our work, we improved the streets, we got rid of non-used space, we ensured the possibility for the upcoming 50 to 60 years not to repair any communications and engineering networks underground. Our engineering networks are upgraded every year by 3.5%, while in the country in general they are becoming obsolete each year more and more, but by 4%. And today we can say that Muscovites love walking on the streets. We've had we are having 8 festivals per year, and every Muscovite on average went to the new streets 9 or 8 times per year. The service industry received additional tax returns because the visitorship increased by 2 times at least. Tourists are also coming more to Moscow. Speaking about our investment, we got the return on investment for most streets within 1 year, for some streets within 2 years. We also repaired the facades of 3,000 buildings and facilities, giving them back their historical appearance. We lighted many old and new buildings, and what's crucial is that today we return to many buildings and facilities their historical appearance that was expected by many our colleagues for many years. We used the creative forces of Moscow and Russia to do that, as well as a number of foreign highly qualified experts who, together with us, together with Muscovites, helped to implement these projects. Among these projects, we can name Tverskaya Street, Sadovaya Ring, Boulevard Ring of Moscow. Today, We planted around 12,000 trees on the streets of Moscow. You can see the state of these trees. They are pleasing our eyes, and we say that all the streets that we planted are growing very well. We can see that. And today, we don't have issues related to the newly planted trees. Moscow is incredibly beautiful. Moscow got income. Moscow got the status of a great and beautiful city, which was proven during the Football World Cup. During the World Cup, we saw the happy faces of Muscovites and tourists. More than 3.6 million people were walking on the streets. Foreigners felt comfortable on the streets. They felt very well. They were entering into cafes and restaurants. They were treated with respect and hospitality. Moscow has shown the whole world that we are following the right path, that we are keeping up with the times. And our colleagues, researchers from independent expert groups and expert companies will be able to tell better than I what we achieved to compare with other capitals and cities. Thank you, Mr. Birykov. Of course, we did notice and we did appreciate the scale of changes in Moscow. However, I do have a question, Peter. What did you fail to do? Because we fail on something all the time. Only you can answer this question. Nothing failed. And things that did not work will remain in my conscience. All right? The mayor set a number of objectives to us. We do have some work left. I can speak about what we managed to do for hours. Regarding the things that we did not manage to do, we have all witnessed that during the program implementation, but it can be corrected. Let's now address Konstantin Polunin. BCG analyzed the Moscow environment and improvement recently. So what are the effects of improvement for the city, how it can be measured, how it can be compared with other cities of the world? Thank you, Natalia. Can I ask to put my slides? You know, you set a very ambitious goal to speak in 5 minutes about that and answer all these questions. But Moscow has an ambitious project, so you have to keep up. Yes, I'll try. Indeed, we had a goal to understand what is improvement, what's comfortable urban environment, how to measure the result, how to compare it with the other cities. That's quite an ambitious goal, because comparing Moscow to New York or Paris means for me as a partner of BCG to have the discussion with my colleagues working in Paris, London, New York or Tokyo, because objectivity is the crucial thing for us. In our company, our reputation, our skills and our global network is everything. So this is indeed a global challenge for us. So the new public areas, the well-being, how to measure the effects. I have only 5 slides and I will briefly speak about them, and I will focus on the main things. The idea number 1, we are facing new reality. New reality is the fact that the nature of competition between cities and countries changes. To the left of the slide, you can see the picture. Over the last 20 years, the percentage of the foreign direct investments is decreasing. On the other hand, the nature of competition between cities and countries is changing. Today, cities and countries are competing for talents. What does it mean? It means highly qualified people able to create new products, services, and the economy of the future while working in the economy of the present. What is it manifested in? It means that the evaluation of business is done not only based on assets, but also based on expectations and the future value. the expectations are formed through the concentration of skilled workers. The picture to the right shows the migration of skilled workers. It's showing that people are migrating to the more developed countries. Question 1, what does it mean in general? Question 2, what does it mean for Moscow? It means that megacities create 3 out of 5 jobs today. Second, cities are competing for talents and are concentrating them. People are living where they feel safe, comfortable, where it's good to live, where there are opportunities to develop. Next idea. We are convinced about the following. Actually, comfortable urban environment is a key factor of competition and competitiveness of a megacity. Why? Because we have skilled workers, we have their families, entrepreneurs, and for them the main focus is the quality of life. People live where they feel it comfortable to live, and one of the key parameters is the quality of the urban environment. It attracts talents. Talents attract smart investments and any investments in general. The smart investments and talents attract technologies, and as a result we have opportunities not only in the past but also in the future. What is the city doing? It focuses on the quality of life, on comfortable environment, on the rules of the game, and creates the respective conditions. Now, if we put quality of life and comfortable nature of the urban environment in the center, explaining that this is the key competitiveness factor for cities, the question is how to measure it, how to measure how comfortable the urban environment is. We thought about it and we took the following basic idea. Context determines behavior. As soon as we change context, behavior changes. Now, the change of context leads to the change of perception, then to the change of behavior, and as a result we get new content. The new content for which people are still living in the cities and don't go away. And based on that, cities compete with each other. So we decided to measure the elements of quality of urban environment and how they determine the behavior. Here we can see the aspects of these metrics. We consider the buildings and the courtyards, the transit spaces, the points of attraction, and then we also evaluated the pedestrian infrastructure, the external attractiveness, and other parameters. What's next? Next came the most complicated and interesting part, because we used 45 parameters, statistical ones that could be compared with other cities, surveys that could be compared with other cities. We also analyzed Instagram for semantics. We analyzed many social media, and we came to quite an interesting conclusion. Konstantin, could you please briefly say what the conclusions were? Yes, I will accelerate. I just tried to fit in 5 minutes. So here is the result. Red means Moscow is less than 75% of cities. Here we have 12 cities. Red and orange mean that we are worse than other cities in terms of these elements. Green means that we are better than 50%, and yellow means we are within 50 to 75%. What we can see here: first, Moscow has become greener. Second, we see that the presence and quality of elements of urban environment is translated into perception and behavior. I can give a lot of examples here about how we managed it and measured it. I'll just give the following examples. Of course, we organized polls, including polls of tourists. The net promotion score of Moscow is 50%. It means that every second tourist is ready to actively recommend Moscow. Second, the seasonality. The perception lags behind the implementation. I mean, first we upgraded the streets and then we got the reaction of people. And there are a lot of some other interesting things. Here's how Moscow looks to compare with other cities. Moscow made huge progress. Here to the left you can see Moscow in 2011, to the right Moscow today. Today Moscow looks like that. Moscow is in the medium level, so there are things that still can be improved. We believe that Moscow 2025 can become a potential leader. And the crucial thing I would like to highlight, Moscow has one of the key advantages to compare with old cities. I'm not speaking about new cities such as Dubai. So Moscow has shown unprecedented speed. We have witnessed no city that would have made such a quick progress. If we take a selection of our cities, we see that Moscow can indeed become a leader. Mr. Birukov, you have mentioned some of the principles that we also would like to indicate if we develop there. First, human focus. Second, policy center. Then concentration and sites with potential. And speaking about connection, I'm speaking about the connection between cultures and generations. And I'm also speaking about moving from the center to the outskirts. It should follow certain principles. Why? Because in that case, talents will be concentrated as well as quality of life will be concentrated. And through connection, we will have the mobility and the dynamics that the Chinese are trying to achieve by making 30 million people cities. Thank you very much. Let us thank Konstantin. It's very passionate. It's actually frustrating to interrupt the speaker who is speaking about the successes of Moscow in the Moscow Urban Forum, but I had to do so. Actually, I did not have time to finish. Well, Mr. Garvin, for many years you've been developing the American cities. In particular, you've been creating public spaces. How are they influencing the environment? Can we please put on the presentation?
Question, or do I translate it?
I need the presentation.
Well, we'll get you the presentation. Did you get my question?
No, I didn't. The answer is in my presentation.
Oh, all right, perfect. Let's just, yeah.
Я попытаюсь по-русски.
I will try to do it in Russian. I don't speak as well Russian as the others. My book explains how you need to organize the common space. That's what we talked about. And I believe that there are 6 main elements. It should be for everyone, for kids and elderly people. There should be something in the city for everyone so that they could feel comfortable in that space. And the space should always transform and create reasons for people to come there. And we need to have a system in order to constantly develop the city. It should be comfortable to be there and pleasant, and the relations between people have to be civilized. To show what it means, I selected one park in Dallas, Texas, that was built several years ago. There was a district where there was an opera, concert hall, a museum, and few people went there. The road that divided that part of the city, Dallas, into a district that was transforming. The district is called Uptown, and they decided to cover this road and to build a park upon it. This park is called Clyde Warren Park. And if you can see, this is a park for everyone, for adults, for kids, for men, for women. And this park has something for everyone. Have a look. There are various things that were built there.
This is a small park. It's about 300 meters long. So when you get to that park, everything changes to attract people there. Restaurants. There are games, a lot of points of interest. And this resulted in greater urbanization of Dallas. And as you can see, when I was there, I took this photo about 18 months ago. 12 buildings were under construction. And after that, it became an agreeable place. Temperature, air, everything needed for this to be a comfortable place so that you can do anything you want there without standing in anybody's way. These are the principles of building a common space. And this is a result of such a park. This is a small park in Dallas, Texas. I did the same thing in 2004. I recommended a park for Atlanta, Georgia, that connected the railways, not for passengers, but for cargoes. And in 1 year, the city of Dallas decided to build this system. And this is a system of parks. So now it is under construction. About half is already completed. And this has changed life in Atlanta. And this became a new public space all around the city. All the buildings that you can see there on the map, those black buildings, they were built after the system had been installed. And it's a system called the Atlanta Beltline. And that's it. Thank you very much. Victor, they say that you had a survey or a study of the embankments of Moscow. Please tell us about their results and what's the difference between the opinions of the authorities, the architects, and the city residents. Well, I will start not with the study of embankments. There was a curious project that we did under the order of the Institute of City Development, but we also did a different study. Now that Konstantin was unable to add this fly in the ointment, I feel the need to add that fly. So let's look at a simple situation. When projects involving beautification of or development of a territory is done, 90% of the residents, of the dwellers around this area say that, yes, it's inconvenient. It's always inconvenient for most people. So right now, 1/3 of Muscovites say that as a result of those works, the city became worse, and 1/4 says that it remained unchanged. For the sake of comparison, the percentage of people who said that the city became better as a result of this beautification process is 80%. So we understand why this work is good, what it brings in terms of economics. But do we understand the social value of beautification? Do we understand those initiatives that seek to improve the city environment? How are they understood by people? What's the mechanics of communication? Because for us, communication is not about how the authority tells its residents what they are going to do. For us, the important thing is what people finally write on Facebook. I can tell you for a lot of time how it affected the perception of the public opinion. I should say that in 2017, the authority confidence indicator deteriorated in 2017. Then in 2018, the courts, the same indicator for the courts deteriorated even more. But the authorities do not have any confidence, do not have any trust from the people. And in terms of institutional trust or confidence, any change in the city environment, even if it's great, even if as a result people really start walking more on the streets, but still there are a lot of negative social effects. One of them is further decrease of trust. So what are the usual requests of people? Let's do it different. Not first ask architects what to do, but let's ask first the people what to do. Well, and actually there can be a lot of social conflicts. And one such conflict is some tension between the city society's request and the request of local residents. Because for local residents, this is something that is part of their habitat. And local residents have very different requests. And they often say that their interests are not taken into account because embankments are made more beautiful to attract other people, not them. As a result, we have a strange thing when there are more people coming to the embankments, but people who live there or walk there do not like it. Their interests are not taken into account. And we made a relevant survey. And the second point of tension is that we are a public entity. We prepare reports on how many people came there. And as a result, a lot of groups, and most of all families, are not really enthusiastic about it. They dislike this. There is a request for more private zones. One such zone will be called Neskuchny Sad, that is what was left from the past, and people ask not to do anything with this Neskuchny Sad territory. So a lot of people ask for more private zones along the Moscow River. I will just ask one specifying question. Do I understand you correctly that you are recommending greater fine-tuning of the projects and more advice from the local residents? Tell us. How can the city convert your recommendations into something specific? As to specific recommendations, we have 6 different scenarios for land improvement. As for embankments, there's a good contact with the relevant institution and everything is working. But in general, there are 2 recommendations. The first one is to make a good surveys, representative surveys, not just ask the happy people on the embankments. Then ask people who live around and take a decision before and not after the project is started. And the second recommendation concerns Tatarstan. We should really talk to the people. If you write that you talk to people, you should actually go and talk to the local people. Otherwise, this dialogue will have nothing to do with the local people. So let us thank Victor And now we will ask Francine with a request to tell about your experience and two specifying questions.
Try to get my tool.
Okay, all right. Первый вопрос.
So the first question, how do you connect the interests of the city authorities and the residents? How do you make sure that those interests are the same? And the second, how does the quality of design determine the quality of the public space for the broader public? Or maybe the quality of design is not so important. So what's your attitude towards it?
Sorry, I thought maybe answering this, how to connect to the people and the local authorities by this project. I hope it's the right thing. It's about, I should be a little bit more like this. This? Closer? Oh, this one. Okay, like this, okay. So, okay, I go like, okay. I will talk not about Moscow, but as an example about Kaohsiung. It's a harbor city, and it's I came there many years ago. It is what I call a second city, a harbor city, an industrial city. Like this is now like more than 20-30 years ago. And what the city decided, and I think I was extremely happy what I heard this morning from your mayor, that you want to make that the city should give quality of life, but also to go towards a sustainable planning. That I didn't hear yet in Moscow. I think that's still a big issue, but me as a European architect would say do that the same. And this, I came to Kaohsiung like 12 years ago. It was like this. It was very, it was bad quality of air. There was a lot of pollution. And this is the picture of it, how it is now. 12 years later, they made green parks, they cleaned the river, they have been working on industrial areas to clean it up. One thing I want to tell you is also about mobility. It's very much part of planning of a livable city. So what we did, we took the whole traject of the train that goes through the city. They made it a train, it was a barrier in the city, and they decided to cover it and put a park on top of it, make more railway stations to get it more like a subway, and in the center it should be, so it's like a green corridor, but in the center there should be the main railway station. And I want to talk about this railway station. Because a lot of railway stations, not here in Moscow to be honest, because you have beautiful subway stations, metro stations, but it's a place to come together. I have to explain to you this is a tropical city, a subtropical, tropical city. So the climate is totally different than, for instance, here in Moscow. This is how it was, the whole bringing all the trains down and connecting to the subway and to the buses and pedestrian areas. This was the plot, and it was already ongoing. And what this, in the year 2000, SOM and the American office made a design for Kaohsiung Station. But the whole neighborhood, what is like 4, 5, 6 stories high, they hated it. They thought it was not in the scale of their neighborhood, of this historical center of Kaohsiung. And then so it was not approved. And then in 2009 there was another proposal by a Taiwanese architect, but they still felt it felt too global, it felt too big, and listening to the local people, they did not like it. Again, it was not approved. And then they asked us. What we did is to continue, because these mobility things are already under construction. So we said, okay, let's keep the whole foundation of the original plan, but do something else on top of it. So it has several layers. It's a railway platform, a metro platform, a sunken plaza. I will explain to you. It's like a tropical space. And on top of it, we made you get street level, and then you get a canopy, what is like a park with a bike path as part of the green corridor, with then on top of it commercial towers. So this is ground level. It's like an enormous park with a canopy above it to protect you from the rain and the sun, and to really make the subway, the whole main station of Kaohsiung, as a park, as a place to meet each other. And this is the canopy level. I will show you in 3D. That makes it more easy for you. And this is that whole park, what is now under construction. Also, it's very much about identity. If I look at many stations in the world, again, not here in Moscow, they look often the same. You get a kind of global identity thing. I always like this image. It's the natural ventilation test of the tropical space. This I want to show you. This is now, it's under construction. Look at the ceiling. It was inspired by the red lantern canopies of the temple we knew in Kaohsiung. And this is the space, the welcome lobby of Kaohsiung Station, what is now under construction. We developed new lamps, especially for them. Here it's still under construction because it will take another 4 or 5 years to build it. But here's a small movie that explains it, and then I'm done. But if you like, you get this little movie. You want it? Yes? It's nice for you. Maybe somebody can start it. I don't know how to do that. Oh, yeah. Station, we kept it. It's a tropical space.
Будьте любезны.
Thank you very much.
Ну, собственно говоря, вот как раз.
Actually, this is an example of how different interests are taken into account by this project. The interests of different users are taken into account. And that's an approach as to how to connect the interests of everyone. And I believe that this is what Victor mentioned as well. This is about the right identification of the interested parties, of the stakeholders. It's all interconnected, and we wish you success with the implementation of this project. And I would like to give the floor to Yelena Korotkova. And I think your mic is working. And I would like to ask you about your survey on the effects of land improvement. There is an opinion that land improvement makes rent very expensive. As a result, a lot of rent leases are eroded from this place, and tenants leave this place. So What's your opinion about this? Is it actually a myth? And what are the effects of land improvement according to your data?
I am a bit skeptic about widespread opinions, as every analyst present here perhaps. Last year we conducted a survey. That was a survey that was not commissioned. We decided to understand ourselves what's happening on the streets that Strelka was working with. And we organized a survey based on streets that underwent improvement a year before the time of the survey. That's not the actual presentation, but I will try to speak about that in 5 minutes. So what did we try to understand? We tried to understand what changed specifically in terms of figures, facts, locations. What is changing a year later after the improvement works, when the constructors leave the construction site? We had several partners. We did not do it alone. You have the list of these partners here. They have helped by their data and expertise. We took 7 streets. These streets underwent improvement in summer 2016, and a year later we started analyzing them. And we also took several other streets of the same type to compare what was on the streets that were not improved. The upper 3 streets are unique streets that don't have any similar counterparts. What did we do? We measured the number of pedestrians. We looked at pictures. We saw how the view of the streets changed in the photos of the users. We considered the average speeds of vehicles, and we polled the entrepreneurs themselves and their opinions on what's happening. By 2017, there was no data regarding fiscal information, so it was difficult for us to assess the fiscal results. Nevertheless, we organized the in-depth interviews with owners and renters, that is to say with the stores. And now I'd like to speak about the 3 groups of users and how they reacted. What happened to the pedestrians? The following thing. First of all, their number increased. You can see it on the pictures. There are more young people now, and there are more pictures of specific facilities. For example, the long bank on the Novy Arbat Street. There are more pictures during the night time. That means that people are ready to walk on the streets at night and are not afraid to put out their iPhone. And there are now more visitors with children. That means that people find it more comfortable to walk there with kids. People are using more skates, scooters, and bicycles. And there is a bigger number of pictures of various activities. Not necessarily the administration organized festivals, but all kinds of festivals. And there are more pictures in wintertime, which also shows that these streets have become more comfortable for the wintertime. We measured the pedestrian flows. We measured them over a specific period of time before the beginning of repair works and after. That was the late August, early September, and we did not take into account the peak traffic during the day of the city. And according to our estimations, the pedestrian flow increased by 14% to compare with 2015, and on weekends the number of pedestrians on some streets increases even by 105%. So now about businesses. You have 1.5 minutes left. Okay, so regarding business, we witnessed the increase of the number of cafes and services on the streets. So regarding the balance between negative and positive factors, the rotation of the renters increased and the vacancy decreased. Who is leaving? Answering your question, Natalia. Expensive, luxurious shops go away, and retailers and cafes focused on pedestrians take their place. Regarding the business categories, they are mentioned here. For Tverskaya Street, the vacant spaces decreased by 15%, and these places were taken by cafes and services. There is some effect for real estate. Regarding the residential real estate price, we found an effect that we can name a deferred effect. The prices react with a lag by 1 year because people need some time to understand that the situation has changed, that they can purchase an apartment because there is no more noise or dust. Regarding the transport, the increase of pedestrian areas made the traffic calmer. We took the same period before and after the construction works, and it turned out that the peak speeds are decreasing, and the average speed before the start of the improvement was decreasing on these streets, and after the repair works it started increasing. You can see the figure, it's 12% now. The last 2 ideas. Yes, I have 2 slides left. Regarding the number of accidents, it started to decrease on the crossroads and on the streets that were researched into. So what are the main conclusions? First, the increase of the number of cafes, including medium-priced ones, the vacancy decreases, the number of pedestrians increases as the initial reason for the first 2 effects. The share of young people has also increased, and the traffic has become calmer. That is to say, peaks are decreasing and the average speed is increasing. Thank you very much. It has been quite interesting. Dear friends, I would like to ask those who have questions from the audience to raise your hands so that we could give you the opportunity to answer. In the meantime, I'd like to ask my question. Just to clarify, I'd like to ask Victor to give us quite clear recommendations, not regarding the values, but more specific ones, based on your experience, based on the result of your analysis. What would you suggest to change in our approach? Natalia is trying to give me the opportunity to make things milder and calmer, but actually it will not happen. First of all, our research was related to the issue of how collective protest mobilization that we are trying not to speak about, but that became the absolute reality of the Moscow policy in recent years, is compared with how various initiatives are perceived with different groups of population. Is it related to the design or the communication strategy? Usually the expert community reminds us of people who are sitting on a tank of gunpowder and are trying to decide on in which color to paint it while it's about to explode. But we should discuss not just the economic effects and other effects, but first of all the social processes that are taking place. These are the processes of solidarization. The average number of friends and acquaintances of people is increasing. The interpersonal confidence level is increasing. People do not trust the actual system of political and social institutions, including the healthcare system, so they're trying to resolve their issues using the network of personal connections. There is a decrease in trust to institutions. It means the following. The land improvement could perhaps increase the confidence, and that would be great. But we see now that the initiatives that are currently undertaken just enhance the lack of confidence. Do you mean that we need to pay attention to involving people at the very beginning of design works and take into account their wishes in the terms of reference for improvement of a particular site? I'm trying to make it constructive. You mean positive? No, just constructive. That would be a very good solution, not to imitate participatory mechanisms, but really involve people at the stage when the decision is not yet made. Victor is speaking about the negative impact of the government and policy. The city has been made clean and bright, and there is research that shows that people are happy and comfortable, and there is no social tension. I'm one of the members of the community of the Russian Federation citizens, and I see no tension. It's clear. But researchers are using figures. But the question is a bit different. I'd like to ask you, Konstantin, to comment on that. Let's have a discussion. Let's try to do that. Look, we all have a lot of figures, but it's a matter of confidence and whom we poll. Many factors can impact the statistics. I'd like to give several examples. Actually, I do agree with you. Actually, the city, while creating the comfortable environment, is changing the behavior, and the idea is that it will later go to the regions and form the area of confidence. The question is, something is wrong with the video. Thank you. Konstantin, please continue. Yes, I'll be brief. I agree that there are matters related to confidence and to the interaction of communities. And I also live close to the Park Kultura metro station. The question is how to balance various interests. This is a relevant issue, but the answer is first, polycentricity, second, increase the connection between centers. I would like to use the figures again. We polled highly qualified foreign experts within our project about tourism for Moscow, and we asked them, would you be ready to move here with your family, with everything? And we were surprised, really surprised. I do have a lot of highly skilled experts in BCG. We are a global company working with many people, so we have a good sample. 40% of people we polled are ready to consider living and working in Moscow because it's a cool, hyped city, and it is undergoing major changes. Of course, there are politics, there is perception and all the other matters, but the results are interesting because these people have lived in various places and they can compare Moscow with its counterparts. There are some other things related to perception. We used our serious algorithms, it's serious important data. We did what you did with the mobile operator data. If you take their data, you understand what are the tourist flows, what is happening, and so on. And these figures have confirmed our assumptions. We can see the real effect today, and you can show it on a heat map of Moscow. An important idea that I would like to mention here. We are speaking about the maintenance of the confidence environment, but it's very important not to lose speed. Why? Because the perception and the expectations of the city residents will increase. And I am used to Moscow, and as a Moscow resident, I feel comfortable on the Triumphal Square and in the Neskuchny Garden. It's important to take into account the expectations of the city and of the residents of different parts of the city. At the same time, the speed of change should exceed expectations. I actually don't agree with you. Alexander, you wanted to say something. It's all too simple. No one told how we are going to pay for that and what are the alternatives. For this spending. Everyone wants to have more space. Everyone wants to have common space, but where will the money come from and what are the alternatives? That's too simple. Piotr, could you please comment on all that? It's very good that we have such a discussion. We are strongly convinced that when we are doing something, no one likes that, but when it's done, everyone is grateful. So there is never 100% for or against. When we are making works, the residents don't like it, but when it's done, they do like it. So we need to get advice. We need to work upon proposals of Muscovites. In the upcoming 5 years, we are going to make some projects. Muscovites are offering us things, then we are preparing solutions based on what they offered, and we are moving ahead together. And the last point, who is going to pay for that? Moscow is different from Paris, Berlin, and other cities. Muscovites are not paying for comfort in their courtyard. They are not paying for comfort in the streets. If a courtyard is made in Berlin, all the residents of that area contribute to that financially. That's quite important and relevant. Is it right that the Muscovites are not paying for that? I believe that it is. In New York, they don't pay for that as well. So that's nice. We are proud to say that a space of 300 meters or 3.5 hectares, we are already proud of that, but 313 streets got 1,900 hectares. I mentioned more than 500 parks, 18,000 hectares of urban environment have been improved for Muscovites. People pay taxes, but nothing more. That's clear about the city and about its residents.
Thank you. I think we're running out of time for Q&A from the audience. I don't see anybody dying to ask a question. There is one person who wants to ask a question. Good afternoon. I have one question. When will these programs permeate to the regions? A good question. As a representative of the region is a good question. We already have comfortable urban development programs for the regions. They don't have such financing as in Moscow. They cannot have similar financing as in Moscow. These solutions have already permeated and spilled into the regions. 2017, August, United Russia Party, Dmitry Medvedev held a designated forum. They developed this program encompassing all regions. The Russian government earmarked huge funds for urban development, and those funds reached all regions, and then regions started putting together their development programs patterned on the Moscow city. I can give you several examples. Next to us, Tula, the city of Tula, is now working on its wonderful Kremlin embankment, 30 different territories, different areas. They are following the same standards as Moscow is using. I can give you further examples from the central region, federal region. Our partners from Design Bureau Strelka are actively involved in that. Our expertise in Moscow, our approaches, methodologies are being spread around Moscow, so it's set in motion. In Moscow, we started with 4 streets. So of course, if this project follows the same, is implemented at the same pace, it would take 5 years for the regions. Vladimir said at the State Council, when he talked about the creation of comfortable urban environment, he made this point, and the system is developing and is covering all of Russia. Fedor Pavlovich, I fully agree with you. However, 30 billion have been earmarked for the whole country, 25 last year, 30 given the competition for small cities and historical settlements. And, you know, for decades, regions were deprived of these funds. So the president of Tatarstan, as you know, invited me from Moscow to bring the Moscow experience to Tatarstan, and we delegated you. The reason is that we need to create designs fitting the budgets. I went to Kazan, and I faced the situation. They told me these are the key public spaces, Chorное озеро Park and the first historic garden in Kazan. So I called Oleg Shakira, who designed the embankment in Tula, the Krim embankment, my elder friend. I said, Oleg Arkadьевич, we need this project, and he gave me the amount. And I said, we need to cut it in half. So he gave me a different amount, twice as little. We agreed. So when I went to the Ministry of Construction and I said that this project would cost such and such amount, and they told me we have earmarked for 100 units, for 100 projects across the region for the same amount. So we need to create our School of Architecture so that people, given all these circumstances, can do this work for the money that is available. My point is that clearly Moscow's experience is replicated across the country, but we need to understand that resources are lacking in resources in the regions. And maybe it's a good thing, because quite honest, I wouldn't quite agree with the point about speed. Maybe you need to slow down, and maybe you need to speak to the people and talk to the people and find out what they really want. Well, one thing does not negate the other, does not cancel the other. It's just a matter of organizing it in the proper way. Well, taking Moscow with its tight spaces, you know, we can have a 5-hectare park. We try to squeeze in bicycle routes. We have to cut through the web of communications and utility mains. You know, but there are many other places where you can design ski routes without any preliminary works, or bicycle routes without having to remove or relocate utility mains. It would cost much less, and we need to create competitive environment among designers, architects, so that we have 20,000 of such experts, not 1,500 as we have now. Only competition would allow us to reach these goals. I'm talking about Moscow experience. I'm talking about the system. Each region should have its own approach. And I think this is a proper point to finish our discussion at. I think we would all second our panelists. And I think we'll continue discussing the achievements and the problems of our beautiful city of Moscow.